You are now listening to The Perfect Prana with Kyah and What's poppin'? What's good? You're listening to The Perfect Prana Show on 88.1 FM WCRX, also available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. I'm Kyah Ann, your host and a yoga instructor on the Chicago scene. And if you love yoga, this is the perfect place to be. And if you do not love yoga, this is still the perfect place to be because I have the usual up for you all today. Yoga news, where I speak about what's going on in the world and how it relates to yoga. Yoga Hills, where I invite on a very special guest and talk to them about their practice. And the Weekly Wellness Challenge, where I've been following the 8 limbs of yoga. But before we get into all of that, let's center ourselves. Let's take this moment to go inward, to focus on our breath, to focus on our prana. Prana, translating to breath, is in the breath of life, our life energy source. There's many translations, but no matter where you're at, you're sitting in the car, you're sitting on the couch, you're laying in your bed, you're walking in the park, there's an array of options. Just take this moment to align your spine. Create a nice line of energy from your tailbone to your crown so breath can effortlessly move through you. And just start to notice your breath and what it does and how you breathe naturally without controlling it. And just know you can always come back to this. Let's start by pushing out all of the breath so we can start a new breath cycle together. Inhale through your nose, right into your belly. And exhale, let out a sigh and push out all the breath. Keeping a nice upright spine, inhale through your nose to fill your belly up like a balloon and hold at the top. And then exhale, sighing it out, deflating your belly, pushing out all the air. Inhale through your nose, let the breath travel to any part of your body that needs attention and nourishment, and hold. And exhale, let out that sigh, pushing out all the breath, expelling all the air, expelling what you do not need, and holding at the bottom. Inhale to fill all the way up into your belly, up to your collarbone. And exhale, letting out that dramatic sigh, pushing out all the air. Let your breath come back to a steady rhythm. I am centered. Let's get on with the show. Yoga news. Naomi Klein says yoga teachers and white wealthy fitness gurus are fueling vaccine skepticism. Canadian author says yoga studios are a hotbed for conspiracy theories. That's so crazy. First, I'd like to say, what's wrong with skepticism? I hate how skepticism has been demonized, especially when it comes to like the holistic healing or the holistic health world. Everything should be in question, critical thinking. We should all be able to ask questions and to not just accept everything that is given to us. Like, we should be able to dig a little deeper and really be like, I don't know about that. Or, dig a little deeper and find out and say, hey, no, this is the truth. This is really the answer to my problems. Why is it acceptable to be skeptical in some areas in life, but not others? Like, no, we should all around be skeptical and dig further and want more information and just be smarter and wiser. Like, what's wrong with that, Yoga is part of holistic health or holistic healing or holistic wellness. So, of course, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists that are also into yoga. Personally, I love good conspiracy theory. Sometimes people are conspiring and there is more than meets the eye or more information than what is just known commonly. Some things are deeper. Now, I'm not saying that the conspiracy theories are right, and I'm not going to say that they're just completely wrong. You know, I can't give the answers for everything, but I can say I hope that we can live in a world where we create more space for different lines of thoughts. Like, you know, step out of judgment and step into curiosity, if you know what I mean. We should all be able to ask questions. Everybody knows that saying, you know, no question is a stupid question or whatever. It was like, yeah, but we should all be able to ask questions, be skeptical, dig deeper, or just be open to other people's lines of thoughts. That's love. You know, yoga is all about love and being more loving to people. So we should be more loving to each other, to ourselves, but definitely to each other, even when we have differing opinions and differing beliefs. We should be like, you know what? We don't see eye to eye on this, but still approach the situation with love and compassion. But she's like, you know, yoga studios are a hotbed for conspiracy theory culture, which is hilarious. And honestly, in my experience, that hasn't been the case, but I'm sure that exists. But that's just because it's associated with holistic healing. But in some cases, and maybe a lot of cases, holistic healing is the answer. It is true, and it's really beneficial. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the end all be all, but I think it's just, again, it's important to be open to everything, you know. I don't see a problem with conspiracy theory culture. I mean, I guess sometimes it can be problematic, but I think question asking should be encouraged. To me, it's suspicious when somebody is so fixated on wanting everybody to think the same thing. That's a conspiracy right there. Like, you know, why demonize one thing? Like, okay, I don't know. It's a touchy subject. People are very, very passionate about it. And I used to be passionate about this at one point too. But now I try to be open to all different perspectives. But one thing I don't like is when somebody tries to change my perspective. You could find evidence to support whatever you think. I could find evidence to support what I think. You could find evidence to support what you think. And honestly, I just think the best thing we can all do is just live the way that we think we should live and see what happens. Like, sometimes you just gotta experiment on yourself and see what works and what doesn't work. But anyways, I don't know this Naomi Klein person, this Canadian author, but this article came up and I was like, I want to talk about this, but I don't want to talk about it too deeply because it was such a polarizing subject, and I just hate how a lot of people separated over this subject, and it just, again, it made us love each other less, and we don't need that. We need to love each other more. This is all about health and wellness, and part of health and wellness is community and love, feeling love, giving love. That does so much for us in our spirituality and our mentality and all that jazz. So it's just so important to just be full of love. So to have topics like this that polarize people and throw love out the window, it's like, man, we need to love each other through it. Like, come on. Yoga heals. This week's guest is Daniel. I actually met him at Yoga View as he was finishing his yoga teacher training. He's a multicultural, very enthusiastic yoga practitioner with a background in healthcare as a medical interpreter, health counselor, clinical research assistant, and so much more. His health journey and self-discovery process has allowed him to understand that wellness starts with mental hygiene. His mission is to fuse traditional mindfulness techniques with indigenous philosophy to reunite individuals with their relationship to the earth. I'm so excited for this discussion, so let's just get on to it. Hello, Daniel. How are you doing today?
Good, good. I had a lovely yoga session today. Thank you so much for asking.
Thank you so much for coming on to the Perfect Prana show. I'm super blessed and excited to have you with us today. The first question I ask every single person that comes onto the show is, when did you start practicing yoga? Why do you still practice yoga today?
I'm still crafting that story because I was first introduced to yoga back in high school. This was a great opportunity for me to get to know the asana practice very briefly with a teacher. And this was also high school. So I kind of like took the opportunity to fall asleep during Shavasana in school, which was never allowed. But that was a very sporadic thing that happened afterwards, right? The practice didn't really have a good cadence since then. I practically did not really get serious with yoga up until 2020 when the pandemic happened. This is, this was my opportunity to stay home and kind of like I first off needed a fitness practice for myself since I wouldn't be able to go to the gym. And I realized that that fitness, physical practice, gave me a lot of benefits that my regular gym routine did not. So, coupled with some books that I found in my bookshelf, which also I consider seeds of thought that were given to me back in college, I actually came across a copy of the Bhagavad Gita that I had in my bookshelf that I read up and it touched on yoga. So I was just like, oh my God, look at this. This is actually what I'm doing right now. And not only that, but there was that deep cognition or deep understanding that the book was giving me in terms of answers that I was looking for, philosophical answers, right? That I was not expecting to get. So this was definitely a very meaningful moment in my life to get close with that book. I was also going through unemployment, so I definitely had a lot of free time in my mornings to wake up, establish a morning routine, get on the floor on the yoga mat, and do some deep soul searching. So it really started from there, right? So I like to visualize it as imagine somewhat of a sine wave that is like, it started back in before 2010. And then that point of the sine wave just kind of created a pendulum effect that did not really come back until 10 years later. But because that pendulum came back and was activated, it kept coming and going and coming and going. And that's where we are today, right? As I'm talking to you today, I just finished a yoga teacher training program that allowed me to deepen my practice in 12 weeks. And it really gave me an amazing foundation of everything that I wanted, a deeper understanding of the asanas, the philosophical standing, and the readings that we were able to go through to understand the philosophy behind the eight limbs of yoga, for example, and also the meditation, which I also started practicing. So fast forward to now, it's just like it's finally a practice that I can maintain in my daily life day by day. And that's also allowed me to tap into an amazing community, which is the Chicago yoga community.
Yes, I love the Chicago yoga community. There was
Mhm.
several things that you said that I wanted to ask you more about. First, you mentioned that you felt yoga was giving you benefits that your regular gym routine just
Mhm.
was not. What were the benefits?
Oh my God. I guess starting with having a better domain of my body while practicing compassion for myself is one of those things that I was never able to practice during my, let's say, weightlifting routine, which, prior to yoga, I would look at myself and compare myself to others and, go into this like egotistic trip, right? In my own mind of comparing myself and saying, why can't I do that? Why can't I just get to that point? And I know a lot of us have gone through that. Where with yoga, it was such an intimate practice, right? It was just nobody else but my breath and my body in the room. And eventually, I also learned to kind of calibrate that set mentality that I brought with me to my yoga practice, because I would also show up to the studio thinking, man, I need to be just like this older person who is just as like, who's also really good, maybe as good as me. And, I would also, again, jump on that egotistic a trip and really think about it from that perspective until I learned that it was not about that at all. The concentration really required me to tune into my body, to not observe what's going on around, if not for inspiration. That's also something I learned through a great book. Um, and I want to say that's something that yoga gave me that my prior athletic training did not give me, among several other things. So aside from domain of my own body and my own mental state, feeling good in my own body, right? Not feeling sore the next day because I overworked myself. I realized, like, wow, I finished a very hard yoga practice today. I can do it again later today. It's not gonna mess up my back. It's not gonna mess up my joints, anything like that. And I guess a third point was that my physique was taking on a more natural posture, right? Which is a very, you know, um, natural thing to say with yoga. It will allow your body to kind of like open up to that openness that now I realize it's that openness that I had when I was a child, right? And I take a lot of emotional meaning behind that as I have entered that mental process of integrating my own inner child with my meditation and myself and my authenticity. I realized that my body also required that authenticity, which I've also deepened through dancing and yoga. But there was a rigidity that I was practicing prior to yoga, let's say with lifting, that did not allow my body to really express itself the way it needed to. So that's a huge third point for me, the authenticity of the body revealed through yoga.
Man, as soon as you said posture, I just sat up a little straight.
Yeah.
I was also going to ask you, you mentioned a morning routine.
Yeah.
And what did that morning routine look like? And did you still carry that morning routine with you when life started to pick back up after the pandemic?
It was definitely like my ideal spiritual morning routine, right? Which entail waking up, go into the balcony to take a fresh breath of air, not from my home, but from outside, eating something very light, and then getting down on the mat, right? If not, to do some yoga right away, to pick up my book and read it, right? And even just the act of reading allowed my body to ground itself and um to feel at ease, right? Being in that position, which in the modern world we're not used to sitting on the floor or anything like that. You wake up, and I've also gone through this. A lot of us that work remotely, we would wake up directly to sit into the chair, right? And stay there for 8 9 hours. So this was the opposite of that. I was not able to keep it for too long because then I found a job, right, which is a good thing, but also it kind of distracted me from these endeavors. But when I was able to spend 2 3 hours on the mat, literally just like hanging out and reading and meditating, that allowed me to truly get a taste, right, of what it's like to have a life that's not so tied to time. I want to say that started my practice of having a healthier relationship with time, where I'm not so attached to what the clock is saying, but rather just being in the moment. I'm still practicing that, but part of the calibration process has taken me into understanding that, yes, well, we do have a job that maybe starts at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. And right now I'm an independent contractor, so I kind of built my schedule. I can still wake up earlier. Yoga has also allowed me to, like, just like understand how important it is to wake up earlier so I could get a lot of these things done, because I'm breathing better, right? If I'm waking up at 6 or 7 a.m. and I don't have to rush, right? If I can just wake up with my breath and take care of my morning and self-care routine before rushing out of home. That's really been that calibration point. Regardless of me having to be somewhere at 9 a.m., I can still take some time for myself to meditate, to journal on my dreams, and maybe do a few asanas just to wake up the body.
Man, you are speaking to me right now. Some weeks are better than others, but it is so important to have that self care. And it is better to have it before you have to go care about the world and go care
Mhm.
about your job and go care about this person and whatever responsibilities. It's nice to just have that time to take care of yourself. I am still working on the process of bettering my relationship
Yeah.
with time. Like I said, some weeks are definitely better than the others than other weeks, but I definitely notice like it just all spills into one another, you know.
Mhm.
My night spills into my morning, which spills into my responsibilities, which spills into my night, and it's kind of cyclical. So it is nice to just set in a morning routine and have a morning where you get up and you just do for yourself. Then you could kind of like reset the cycle and be like, okay, let me try to set a new cycle where
True.
I'm getting up and I'm in more control of my day, more control of my time, and I'm not like, oh, rushing to get places. Like, oh my gosh. So you mentioned like the egotistical aspect of what yoga gave you that where you could start to look at other people and use it more for inspiration. And
Mhm.
I thought that that was kind of a beautiful way to do it. Do you ever have times in your yoga practice in a yoga class where you find yourself still in that like you're on the egotistical trip? What do you do then?
Yeah, no, definitely, right? First off, I'll also open up by saying, even though a lot of us who come to understand our egos better, although at first the ego sounds like an evil thing that we have and that we are, it's not, right? It's kind of like it's a sword, and that sword can be a tool. It can help you defend and, defend yourself, and not in an aggressive way, but in a way of, let's say you're foraging out in the woods, which is the actual reality. Your ego is helping you through it. But if you grasp it the wrong way, it's going to cut you, right? And that's also something that I've come to realize. So saying that, my relationship, and I think we all go through this, we're still managing our ego in so many different aspects of time and space. And it's not until we find new slices of time, I like to call them, right? Like a brand new scenery and a brand new setting that we haven't been to, that we're really being tested as to, how to manage our ego. So yes, I am still coming across some of that in some yoga practices, because let's say I could think, I've done this asana before. It shouldn't be a problem, right? And I'll push hard, and then I'll probably start injuring myself from the pressure. So part of that calibration comes with that that game that we have in yoga between being pushers and sensualists, which I've also read from another article. With being a sensualist, you're just flowing with it. With being a pusher, you're kind of like pushing your limits as much as you can, which does help you grow, but it could also hurt you. And I am still going through a lot of that practice, right? Again, because it is such a mental thing, because it is a construction of the ego that you should be able to achieve something better. That's good and bad, like everything, right? At the same time, it depends on how you think about it, but it also comes with the responsibility of understanding that there is some compassion for your body that you need to maintain, right? So yoga in itself is a union of everything, right? It's, I think, the mind melting into the heart, which I've actually heard a great yoga teacher mention before. And that's kind of like that point that we're driving towards. Okay, I'm being a bit egotistic about this at this very exact moment, but what can I do to calibrate my mind and my heart so that I'm more compassionate with this practice, and so that I don't have to compare myself. And even if it's just comparing myself to a older version of myself or like an optimal version of myself, I could just be myself and enjoy the free form aspect of yoga at that moment.
You said your mind melting into your heart. And that is just a way to think about it. It's just like when you feel yourself using your mind a lot, try to put your heart to it, try to serve that mind up with your heart as well. And like, okay, let me just be more compassionate and be more
Mhm.
loving. Let me love the person that I'm looking at and comparing myself to. And also let me love myself. Yeah, it's like, what more can you do about it with the whole ego thing? I've definitely gone on a lot of ego trips, and sometimes it is kind of like the best I can do is just get out of my mind
Yeah.
and just get into my body. Like, okay, stop thinking. Like, just let the thoughts pass
Yes.
and just focus on this posture, this shape, or what your body is doing. And like you said, where your body is in contact with the ground. A nice little ego conversation. I love it.
It's always an equal conversation. I feel like even if it's just yourself, right, without another person. This happens to me a lot. At least I have to manage those ideas a lot so that I could just achieve that meditative state and not have to think about it, but just be there, just be present. And also being present has allowed me to see more of my progress in yoga because I'm not pushing to something that I want my body. I don't want my body to like reach a specific pose. I'm just doing the asana, and I'm at some point I'm just like, wow, I didn't know I could actually reach this depth. Right. So that those moments usually come without thinking. I'm just
Mm,
being in the practice.
no, you're so correct. I've definitely sometimes the best practice I've ever had, like, or the best moment in a practice I had was when I wasn't thinking about it. I
Yeah.
just was like, oh, let me just do it. And then I try to do it on the other side and I like am thinking about it now. And it's all of a sudden I can't do it. And I have to like refocus and recenter myself. And I'm like, what? Like, how could I possibly do that? Like, just so like effortlessly, like, without even a thought, like, but that is the ebbs and flows of yoga. And also, I find that even with teaching, it is something where you have to get present.
Mm.
Like, I was coming in crazy today, like, oh my gosh, my mind is everywhere. This is wrong. This is wrong. I messed up here. I messed up here. During a point in the class, I just have to be like, okay, like just focus on what you're going to have them do within this next hour instead of focusing on, the past or what you have to do after. Just focus on just the present right here. I find that that's really important as you're practicing, but then also as you're teaching as well. So,
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. As we speak right now, I am preparing for my first class, my first lead class. And there is always the little fears that come up day by day. It's just like, oh, this could happen or this could happen. Obviously, that's also another meditative practice of just defeating the fear. And we're not there yet, so why do we have to worry about it? And if something happens, it'll happen, right? And we learn from it. Um,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What
mhm.
class are you preparing for? Like, where at?
This Saturday at Yoga View, so I'll be doing a community class at 2 p.m.
Ooh, I really, really wish I could come. I'll be out of town.
Oh.
Ugh, no, seriously. Well, I'm excited about that. What I wanted to get more into next is I understand that you work in healthcare.
Mhm.
And I believe you said an interpreter
Yeah.
to be exact, but more so, since you're working within the healthcare industry, how do you use your holistic knowledge to
Yeah.
help patients?
That's such a good question, and it could have a different answer based on which moment in time, like of my career, I'm working with. I'm currently focusing on medical interpreting in English and Spanish, right? And I don't really have a voice as an interpreter to say what to do or to coach people through how to achieve things. I am just the voice of the communication that's happening between the doctor and the patient, right? A lot of times I am embodying the stories of the patients, and those stories can be emotional. And at the same time, the doctor is not having an emotional conversation. They're having a very intellectual, rational conversation where they're driven by facts and numbers, and they need the patients to answer in metrics and numbers. So, really keeping a balance between both. So, I think part of my holistic practice, instead of having an output, I'm more of an input, right? In this practice, I'm listening attentively to the stories. I'm listening to what's not being told verbally. There's a lot of nonverbal cues that happen with body language, also with the vibration of the voice, right? Emotion does change the vibration of your breathing, I've noticed. And the best that I could do, which is really always a huge feat every time that I get down to interpreting mindfully, is that, right? Being a mindful interpreter. And that means a lot. That means achieving a meditative state where I cannot think anything that's happening in my head because I'll lose the train of thought. I'll lose the communication. I am being an absolute vessel of this conversation, this exchange that's happening in the room. And that changes a lot based on different settings. You know, I've spent a lot of time at psych units where a lot is going on, right? There's a lot of neurological unloading that's happening between everybody, and you still have to talk about the story that this patient is talking about. And that's different from, hospitals and more control settings, but there is always that need to be an impartial observer, which always takes me back to meditation, right? If I can do that, then I can also come back home and practice my meditation and just be an observer. I could also get on the bus and get on the train and not judge or create a story in my mind, but just observe and channel what's going on around me so that I could observe. And the reward of that meditative state is always finding new stimulus in the settings around us, right? Like new stories, new words being used. As a language worker, I've also noticed that language is never the same. It always changes, right? Like I've done this for almost 10 years now, and even Spanish, which already is fragmented in like 20 plus different dialects because of all the Latin American countries. Even that can change so much based on what people are watching on the internet, how they're being informed. And that to me is, the essence of meditation. Living in a world where nothing is the same, nothing is stagnant, everything is moving, everything is that cloud in the sky that you're just supposed to observe and just let happen, not identify with it.
Yes, everything changes except the past, literally. But you bring up such a good point, and that's something I didn't think about, how being in this position is something where this is a job or where you really have to be in tune with your emotions and in tune with other people's emotions, because
Mhm.
health is, it can be really touchy for a lot of people, especially if they're in a medical setting. It probably is touchy because normally when people are working with doctors, something's usually wrong, not all the time. Sometimes it's just a checkup, but sometimes it's like, no, my health is struggling right now. So I'm
Yeah,
seeing this doctor and they need to know what's wrong with me and where the pain is and what's going on and etc. So being able to communicate people's emotions, not just what they're saying, but
exactly.
communicate their emotions, communicate their pain is important. And it's something that I've never really thought about. So thank you.
Hmm.
Um, Speaking about communication and also just health, I read that, in your bio that you sent me, you talked about mental hygiene being
Yeah.
important for physical health. And wanted you to talk a little bit about some of the most important things that the average person can and should do for mental hygiene, as a proactive thing. But then also, when you are struggling mentally, what would you do to get your mental hygiene together? Again, for the average person, because not everybody is like, oh, I'm a yogi. I'm going to go
Yeah.
to this 2-hour yoga class and just sit in the shavasana. And then I'm going to, like, what do us normal people do?
Yeah, and that's why I like to use the term mental hygiene, because it's something that everybody has, right? Like maybe not as a practice yet, but everybody has access to organizing their mind, their thoughts. And to be completely honest, mental hygiene to me is a more calm way of introducing consciousness. We're talking about consciousness here, right? So it's really the stream of thoughts that are going through your mind. I like to, just keep it in a simple way by understanding the inner workings of the ego in the mind, and understanding how much of our reality we think are happening to us and not just around us, right? So we do identify a lot with things. That's also being another key part that, just of my process, of my study of consciousness. I understanding how much we identify with things are happening to us, and we kind of feel aggravated and victimized by them, but we don't see that those things can usually have a long-term positive effect, right? If it's something bad that's happening, for example, today I missed a bus, let's call it that, right? And that you don't know when that missing that bus means you missed something up ahead on the road, because that's not for your life process to witness, for you to go through, let's say, an accident on the road, whatever it could be, right? So part of this like identifying process makes us think that bad things are happening to us, but it's really just the ebbs and flows, right, of reality, kind of like pushing you towards where you need to be. And again, this could go into so many different ways of understanding what is that process, that consideration of what's happening around you. But just to keep it very simple, taking things personally is one of those things that we could reduce little by little. And it's not an overnight thing, right? Like it does take weeks and months and years for you to stop thinking something is personally happening to you. But there is always a start, right? And that to me branches out into ideas of anxiety and ideas of depression a lot of the times, right? We do have predispositions, neurological predispositions to anxiety and depression. And at the same time, we do have some agency for what we're able to identify with, to diminish those symptoms of anxiety and depression, right? And anxiety is something that I even now I'm realizing, like, wow, I've been really working with a lot of anxiety throughout a lot of my life, right? So for me, the evidence of this working is that the more I stop thinking about something affecting me, or let's say, for example, somebody leaving me on scene after sending a text and I'm not getting that response, I'm realizing that it's not about me and my effect. It's about the things that are going on around in the world with people's lives. We call that external consideration, right? So under tuning in with that external consideration, maybe in a balanced way, as much as you consider your own internal consideration, that's a good way to navigate this system, so that you have a better view of what's going on in reality, and you're not so aggravated by what's happening in the inner workings of your mind. And that's mental hygiene, I think.
Ooh, well, thank you for going more in depth to that, because I read that and I was like, mental hygiene. I've never really heard or thought of this term, but I do like it because it kind of, just how we have regular hygiene, we have to clean ourselves and
Yeah.
brush our teeth and this and that. We also have to do that for our mental. We have to clean up our thoughts and kind of, some people say, go on a mental cleanse, whatever that looks
Hmm.
like. There is a point where before you're self aware, you've spent years with this stream of negative thoughts. So you're
Literally
right. It
dream.
is going to take years to kind of clean that up and to interrupt the pattern and be like, whoa, let me kind of step outside of that. Like you said, have that external consideration and just, understand that there's other things going on in the world and most things aren't personal and have nothing to do with you. So, yeah, thank you. Also, I mean, I did kind of ask you, are there things that you proactively, I know, so of course you like meditate and
Mhm.
whatnot. So, what are some other things that you can do to be proactive in like getting that mental hygiene together?
Hmm.
Or is it just meditation and mindfulness?
Yeah, no, I mean it's all a web, right? Like part of your question, which I actually didn't get to, is how does mental hygiene affect your physical health and you understanding your own decisions and your own addictions. Let's also say I have an addiction to food, right? So oftentimes I reach out to food whenever I'm bored, whenever I'm anxious. Having a better understanding of how your mind works and controlling it will allow you to also make better nutritious decisions. Which once I encountered that first parallel, but then like absolute intersection between mindfulness and nutrition, that was the essence of my career. I started out as a health coach talking about nutrition and kind of like talking to people about how to manage their diabetes, their high cholesterol and hypertension. It really does come down to having the means to making those conscious decisions. Obviously, you do have a lot of societal things that are affecting you, like food deserts and lack of access to fresh foods and those things, right? But still being able to make a conscious decision as to skipping this piece of fast food and going for something fresher, those things do affect your physical long-term outcome, right? And so to me, it's kind of like a web. That good nutrition allows you to also think clearly because you're not, from a mental perspective, you're not just going by that addictive sugar infused product, but also that nutrition is feeding your ecosystem. A big part of what I like to talk about when I talk about nutrition now is the gut biome, right? And my special type of like spiel, like spiritual spiel about the gut biome is that you are an ecosystem. The universe doesn't end in you, and it's your body. You are creating universes inside of you, and that's your germ colonization too. So maintaining proper nutrition allows you to have a more harmonized body too, which, since you are the temple, your body is a temple, you now have a better flow of energy, a better blood work also even. So that's why that's a web, right? Like the mindful eating allows you to also maintain that mindfulness and clarity as you continue working through a more cohesive sense of your health.
No, you're right. It really is cyclical. I mean,
Mhm.
between nutrition and just between your mental state, when you eat better, you make better decisions, and when you make better decisions is you eating better. So it really does feed into one another. There was one last question I was going to ask you. Yeah, I sent you a list of
Mhm.
questions. Most of the questions I didn't even ask you. I just sent that for decoration.
Yeah.
But no, I really just for the sake of a yoga podcast,
Mhm.
talk about a little bit, what are you working on right now in your practice, in your own personal practice?
Ah, so much. I think yoga in itself is, for me, yoga is not just the physical, right? Obviously, we know about the 8 limbs of yoga, and that gives us a great template of like, these are all the other things in your life, inside of your body, in your mind, and outside of your body that you need to take care of. And I do really grab onto that. And being somebody who's really into philosophy myself, I like to expand on philosophy. I like to think that the philosophy that we're giving is not for us to follow thoroughly and then leave it at that. I like to add on to it. Right. So yoga, I think, because it's a union, right? Yoga is a union of things. I'd like to unite everything, integrate everything that I've worked on through a yoga practice. So that's currently what I'm working on. I'm working on establishing some workshops that are related to health education, yoga, and meditation. And this past year, I started producing music also, which I realized is a great modality for healing as well. I've been questioning myself as to why didn't I start sooner? Why didn't I start making music sooner? And the more I make music, the more I realize, well, because the music that I express, that allows me to express the best, is healing music, right? And I was not able to heal. I was still healing myself back then. Now I consider myself to be in a place where I've healed enough where I can share that process with others, and I can share with others expression of what healing feels and sounds like through resonance. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to adding to my yoga practice, not just meditating to myself with good music and singing bowls, but also providing that to the community. We're talking about production of healing music. I have now gotten my first set of singing bowls, which I've been using to record some stuff. I'm planning on using that for some classes as well. We're already seeing amazing foundation of sound healing practices in the city. I've been to incredible sound baths that I'm also looking at from the artistic perspective, right? Because whenever you're an artist and you find other artists, you kind of inspire each other. I am looking forward to collaborating with them and also creating more ways of expanding this sound healing practice. So a lot of the things that I've been interested in life, I'm able to now integrate through the yoga practice.
That is so cool, honestly. And I love, the concept of sound healing, just because it's using another sense. Just in yoga, sensory withdrawal is important. It's the thing. It's one of the limbs of yoga, if you will, but also experiencing each one of those senses to the fullest and appreciating the beauty about all those senses is healing as well, just as much as withdrawing from them, but
Yeah.
also to be with them and appreciate them. And sound is one that it does a lot for people. Music really changes a whole vibe or a mood or energy of mostly anybody. So, and
Yeah.
we use it in our daily lives to
Yeah,
change
it
how we're thinking.
ministers, right? It definitely
Yes.
ministers. And another thing that yoga has given me is that there is a better way to also look about how our bodies work. I realized through yoga and meditation that I breathe more easily without a shirt because my skin is also breathing, right? And I also came across a perspective that, and I'm looking forward to seeing any kind of clinical research behind this, but there is a perspective that you can also listen with your skin, right? This is a huge organ in your body. So if you're allowed to also take in that sensory stimulus that is sound through your skin, the same way that you breathe with your skin, let's say, that could change a lot of things about how we understand our bodies, about how we understand and take care of our biggest organ, the skin. Right. So that's another thing that I've seen a lot in sound baths. I experienced it myself, and I've heard a lot of feedback from others. There is a lot of, just a rush of energy coming through the entire body, through the skin, traveling through the nerves. So now sound is not something that you have to mind coming into your ears only, but also through your entire body.
Well, thank you. This is a good reminder to be in your body as much as possible.
Yes.
Definitely with sound and with all the senses. Before we go, I would like to ask you to lead us through a short pranayama, your choice, for the perfect prana show.
Yeah, definitely. I had to look at the different pranayamas. I definitely um, took some inspiration from Iyengar's book, Light on Yoga. And so these are some instructions for Sitali. The translation is cool. So Sitala means cool. So this
Mhm.
pranayama cools the system, and that's the name of it. I also chose it because
Ooh.
it's an 85-degree day in Chicago right now, and this is one to really keep in mind as we're cooling our bodies. So you're sitting already. For anybody else listening, you could be sitting in Padmasana, easy position, or on a chair, whatever works for you. And keeping our posture completely erect, letting our heart float and lifting our crown. We're keeping this posture as we perform the your favorite mudra with your free hands. So the cool thing about this pranayama is that you don't need to touch your nose. I love those pranayamas, but I also like using both of my hands for mudras or anything like that. We're now just engaging our hands, both hands, in your preferred mudra. You could also engage your Jalandhara Bandha, but that's not until the inhalation is over. So first you'll open your mouth in an O position. So you'll create an O with your lips, and you're kind of like pushing your tongue out, also creating an O, or let's say a U. So the sides and the tip of the tongue are touching the teeth, from the molars to the front teeth, and keeping your tongue lifted and curled up. This is a fun one because it looks very funny. It's silly to look at, but it's obviously very useful, right? A lot of things in yoga can look silly, but it's your body, like you have to use those tools.
I actually heard that certain people like just can't do this
Oh yeah, that's
genetically.
right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I guess the adjustment is just to do the O with your lips. Like if you can't curl your tongue.
So keeping the shape of your tongue and I love how the book describes it. It says it resembles a fresh curl leaf about to open. How poetic and reminiscent of the spring. So you'll protrude your curled tongue out of your lips and draw in air past the curled tongue. You'll be making a sound, right? So whenever you're ready, go ahead and pulling some air to the brim of your lungs. Hold the breath, withdraw the tongue, and close your mouth. Engage your neck bandha. I'm forgetting the name for this, but essentially you'll unite your chin with the notch of your collarbone and exhale through your nose. So that completes one cycle. This. We'll go ahead and do it for a couple more times. So curl your tongue, inhale, hold, exhale. One more time. Hold, exhale. Come back to your normal breathing and feel the cooling effect of Sitala.
It is a safe way, at least I feel like it's a safe way to breathe through the mouth. Because other than that,
Yeah.
I'm like, do not breathe through the mouth. And it feels wrong to breathe through the mouth.
Yes.
Like even if I just did, like it just feels like I'm just taking in a lot of weirdness into my throat. But that feels like a nice, safe way. Like you're just slowly taking the breath in, like
Yeah.
through a little stream. And it is cool air, so
It is cool here.
it's needed in the summertime for sure,
Yeah.
especially since I drink hot coffee,
Oh, yeah.
even if it's 100 degrees outside, like, I'm still I'm gonna drink hot coffee and then just sweat, so
I'm the same way with soup. I'll make soup no matter how hot it is.
Right? So, thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on to the Perfect Prana show. And with that being said, namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much.
If you'd like to connect with Daniel, I'll put his information in the show notes. You're listening to the Perfect Prana Show on 88.1 FM WCRX, Saturdays at 10 a.m., Sundays at 9 a.m., also available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, where I post extended versions. If you're in the Chicago area and would like to come practice yoga with me, visit me at LA Fitness on King Drive, Wednesdays at 9:45 a.m., Saturdays at 11 a.m. Weekly Wellness Challenge. So I have been repeating the 8 limbs of yoga because I've come to realize it's an endless cycle. We will always be grappling with this philosophy. We'll always have to face these morals, and we'll always have to implement these disciplines to make sure that we're living a better quality life. This week's challenge, Asteya, which is stealing. There's so many ways to think of how we steal from ourselves, how we steal from others. And right now, personally, I've been trying to get my life on track. So I'm feeling the need to give time to myself. I don't know what I did in season 2 for this challenge, but right now I have the strong urge to give myself 10 minutes every day before I leave the house, instead of like rushing out and just feeling like I have no time. I don't have enough time. I hate how that feels. So I want to start giving myself 10 minutes, not to anybody else. 20 minutes would be nicer, but 10 minutes feels more realistic. But I don't want to give it to my job. I don't want to give that 10 minutes to a friend. I don't want to give that 10 minutes to my family. I don't want to give that 10 minutes to my phone, to YouTube, to Instagram, to whoever. I want to give that 10 minutes to myself. Like, I'm craving that time to just be like, just with myself. Honestly, I had a little bit of that this morning before I went to work. Not really, because I was constantly doing stuff trying to get out the door, which is fine. But this morning was an odd morning because I wasn't listening to stuff as I was getting ready. Like, I was appreciating doing my task in silence and just being with myself and just mindfully doing my task. Like, okay, let me just do what I need to do, and I'm not trying to distract myself with stuff. So I appreciated that aspect of my morning. Now, I wish I could have sat down for 10 minutes this morning and just been in silence and, not had any responsibilities or even yoga. I did 1 sun salutation this morning. I wish I could have given myself more time to do more, but I couldn't. I had to rush out for work. Like, let me not be late. But it would have been great if I could have did 5 sun salutations this morning, not just 1. But, I couldn't give myself enough time. And I stole that time for myself last night when I was up on the phone doing whatever I was doing last night. I was stealing time for myself this morning, and I really would have appreciated that moment of just being with myself. But, you live and you learn. Hopefully I learn. Before I go, let me leave you with a quote. So I've been studying to get my personal training certificate, and I've been doing a little bit of reading, looking at the textbooks, anatomy, bodies, movement, exercise, all that great fun stuff. I'm actually going to take a quote from Nazim this week. And who knows where she got this quote from, but I thought it was pretty profound. I liked it. And she said that all bodies are energy in motion. I don't know. I felt like that was profound, but that's something I've discovered since, I went on my whole wellness journey. It is so important to move, to be in motion. If you're alive, you're in motion. If you're not moving, then you're not living. And living is a gift. Life is a gift. So we need to live. We need to move. It's been a great show. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Perfect Prana Show on 88.1 FM WCRX. Also available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, where I post extended versions. To keep up with me, follow me on Instagram at Consistently Kyah, consistently spelled with a K, Kyah spelled Kyah. If you're in the Chicago area and you would like to come practice yoga with me, visit the LA Fitness on King Drive, Wednesdays at 9:45 a.m., Saturdays at 11 a.m. It's been so lovely chatting with all you folks. With that being said, the light and darkness within me bows to the light and darkness within you. Namaste.